The girl never dreamed that waking up one morning, she would find herself transported into this wretched game, and worse, became the villainess destined to be trampled under the heroine's feet. This is literally a nightmare-level starting point, but Cecilia isn't panicking at all, because she has already seen through that fake saint heroine's true nature. That White Lotus is just wearing a commoner's disguise. In reality, she was born with a divine silver spoon carrying the god's will. After understanding her situation, Cecilia doesn't dare waste a single second. She even runs to greet people, shocking her mother and the maids. This lazy bum actually got up on her own. Cecilia has 3 noble brothers. In the game, they all fell under the saint heroine's spell. Normally, acting cute would be enough to win over these game characters. But now, training in swordsmanship to get stronger is what will save her life. But she never expected that her brothers would think this is just a 3-minute enthusiasm, so they couldn't be bothered with her. Even acting cute failed. Fortunately, Theodore eventually softened, promising that if she persisted in training for a week, he would teach her swordsmanship. Cecilia immediately agrees. She schedules training for the evenings. Daytime? Of course she'll cram magic studies. In this world, magic is the ultimate power. The 5 elemental powers correspond to the 5 great houses. Her family controls the shadow element, while the royal family controls the water element. Cecilia understands that no matter how talented you are, it's useless without practice. But the frustrating part is, she can't find a single magic book in the family library, though she suspects she just hasn't found them. She can only start with herbology for now, but when she starts reading, the entire afternoon just vanishes. This world has way too many strange and bizarre things. She gets so absorbed she completely loses track of time. After devouring so many books in one afternoon, she's starting to suspect she might be a genius. But the evening's physical training immediately puts her in her place. A mere 50 push-ups nearly finish her off. Cecilia can't help but wonder, does this body even have any muscles? But thinking of her grand villainous ambitions, she still gets up and completes 100 sit-ups. The next day, she feels much better. Not nearly as brutal as yesterday, though she doesn't know why. But at least she can spend more time in the library. And so Cecilia begins her intense training regimen. During the day, she devours books in the library. At night, she pushes herself to the limit with physical training. However, after a week, when she's ready to shock her brothers, she doesn't realize that not only her brothers, but the entire family is wondering what scheme she's plotting. This makes her feel like she really is like a villain plotting something sinister, and worse, because her brothers are going to visit the Magic Academy. Sword training has to be postponed, but on this very day, while she's in the library until noon, just about to grab lunch, she runs into all the young lords from the 5 great houses. She immediately recognizes these game characters, including the prince. All of them are the saint heroine's love interest candidates. This overconfident prince was the original Cecilia's crush, but he ends up with the saint anyway. She's not getting involved in this melodramatic love triangle compared to men. Aren't power and ambition so much better? So, she must seize this opportunity to show off. The young lords are all shocked by her politeness. She's completely different from what her brothers described. Cecilia knows those 3 brothers must have been bad-mouthing her behind her back. But now isn't the time to settle scores. She decides to take this chance to get her brothers to teach her swordsmanship, but they don't believe she'll stick with it. Cecilia knows she has to show them what she's got. She picks up a sword and kicks the tree trunk. An innocent apple falls down. The sword flashes, and the apple is instantly split in half. It drops to the ground. She looks at them coldly. Don't underestimate me. The prince is stunned on the spot. Even her brothers can't help but ask if she's serious. Cecilia calmly admits it. Only then do her brothers, for the first time ever, agree. Cecilia feels secretly triumphant, worthy of being the woman who will become the strongest villainess. But what she doesn't know is that this kick not only opened the door to swordsmanship, but also accidentally kicked open a certain prince's heart. A whole year flies by in an instant. Cecilia is now 8 years old. During this year, Prince Edwin constantly visits her home, sometimes staying for the entire day. During a training break one day, the prince initiates conversation for the first time, asking why she's training so hard with the sword. She almost says to become a villainess. The prince doesn't quite understand, but he's deeply moved. Fortunately, Cecilia quickly covers it up. Her brothers witness this scene clearly, and they instantly understand. This prince isn't here to learn swordsmanship at all. He's here to pursue their sister. Cecilia has no idea that she's so outstanding. The 5 great houses have already taken notice of her. Because those young lords have been praising her to the skies, now she frequently receives invitations to attend tea parties in the back garden. But today is different. His Majesty the King is coming. When she arrives at the back garden, she discovers that all the young lords, including the prince, are there, and a world map is laid out on the table. The bottom right corner of the map shows the place where she gets exiled in the game. Cecilia's heart tightens. Has the plot been moved up? While she's lost in thought, the king suddenly arrives. Why would the king appear at this time? Cecilia quickly bows respectfully. The king tells her to raise her head. He's come this time to test her. He asks her thoughts on the kingdom's situation. Cecilia never expected the king would test an 8-year-old child on this. But after a brief moment of panic, she quickly sees this as a perfect stage to perform. She immediately speaks eloquently, talking about leveraging trade opportunities, secretly funding neighboring countries' independence to gain favors, make money, and balance domestic wealth inequality. The plan sounds perfect, but she knows if that future saint finds out, she definitely won't approve. How can you charge money for helping people? Their values are incompatible. They'll clash sooner or later, but Cecilia won't back down. Her performance once again captivates the prince's heart. On the way back, A minister reports to the king that they found the location of the golden rose. It turns out the king tested her because he thought she was the saint reincarnated. But the real saint is just a baker's daughter. They say a golden rose bloomed when the true saint was born. When Prince Edwin was born, a blue rose bloomed. According to the divine prophecy, their union will lead the kingdom to prosperity, but will also trigger domestic reform. Before leaving, Cecilia is not only treated by the prince, but even the other young lords notice that this aloof prince pays special attention to Cecilia. That evening, the prince gives her an extremely expensive diamond and wishes her a happy birthday. The moment she sees the diamond, even Cecilia is shocked. Diamonds in this world are insanely expensive. So that night, Cecilia wavers. While doing squats, she mutters through gritted teeth, "Even if that saint later asks me to return the prince, I absolutely won't." The notorious villainess is ready to make her debut. The young Cecilia once again asks her father to let her practice swordsmanship, but her father absolutely refuses. Turns out her swordsmanship has long surpassed ordinary people. Her father worries that if she goes to the sword academy, it will attract big trouble, so he always uses her young age as an excuse to refuse. But no one knows that a different person now inhabits this body, to secretly get stronger without her father knowing. She plans to sneak out for an adventure today. Her destination is the nearby poorest area, Graventown. Legend has it the place is dirt poor, but as soon as she approaches, she discovers it's covered by a magic barrier. Then she smells a foul stench and sees a man lying outside a house. Cecilia doesn't want to get involved. Her identity can't be exposed, but the next second she thinks she's about to die. The man suddenly taps her shoulder, and she realizes he's blind. The man tells her not to be afraid and to put away her sword so they can talk. He asks why she's here alone. Cecilia says she wants to see this impoverished village with her own eyes. The man snorts disdainfully, but still lets her into the house. Fortunately, he has no ill intentions. His name is Casius. Though blind, he can tell from her breathing and the sound of her clothes that she's a noble. This makes Cecilia curious about his past. It turns out Casius was once a noble too, because he offended someone in power. They gouged out his eyes and threw him into this village to fend for himself. Cecilia looks at the man before her. He doesn't seem like an ordinary game character, so she tells him everything about her ambition to become a villainess and change the world. And just like that, the two become friends. In the blink of an eye, 2 years pass. During these 2 years, apart from practicing swordsmanship and reading, she visits Casius. And today, she turns 10. This means today is the day in the game. When the prince and the saint heroine meet, she's looking forward to opposing the saint as a villainess. After all these years of preparation, she has perfected the art of being a villainess. Cecilia and her brother arrive at a plant shop. The shopkeeper sees their high nobles and introduces all the plants, like ones that can heal wounds, ones that can soothe emotions, and so on. Cecilia interrupts directly. "This is all common knowledge. How can you not know this? You're way behind," she thinks smugly. "Good thing I studied so hard." The shopkeeper can only smile helplessly. The next day, she finds her brother and once again asks to practice swordsmanship, but her brother sternly refuses, still claiming she's too young. Afterward, her brother complains to their father that he shouldn't have been harsh with his sister. But this scene is overheard by Cecilia, who happens to be passing by. She pushes the door open and demands to know why they won't let her practice swordsmanship. The atmosphere instantly becomes tense. Her father reluctantly promises to let her practice when she turns 15. Cecilia has to think of another way. She feels that besides magic, other knowledge is important too. But now she decides to focus on magic, because only by mastering magic to the extreme can she become the strongest villainess. Level 1 magic is easy, but level 50 and above requires magic power at the level of great nobles. And level 100 magic can only be used by the prince and the saint. She sets her goal: she must be able to use level 100 magic. Starting with level 1, levitation. First, imagine where the object will float, then snap your fingers. The book actually floats. Cecilia is overjoyed. A few days later, she can easily move several bookshelves, but continuous use drains too much energy. She feels her stamina failing, but she still plans to keep practicing. Unexpectedly, the king suddenly arrives and specifically asks to see her. Her father warns her not to be reckless, but Cecilia isn't panicking at all. She sees this as a trial for a villainess. The king doesn't waste words and directly asks a question. "Cecilia, do you like our country as it is now? I despise the noble privilege system." "What? You don't like it?" "Yes, I absolutely despise it. Because as long as you're a noble, even if you're completely incompetent, you can still occupy high positions." A minister angrily accuses her of insulting them, but the king tells her to continue. "I apologize. I'm not saying everyone is like that, but the standard for nobility is magic power. Yet magic power and political ability are completely different things. No matter how politically minded a commoner is, they have no opportunity. This foolish dual system is absolutely frustrating." One minister scolds Cecilia for being treasonous, but another minister says she's just a child and they shouldn't take it seriously. Cecilia rolls her eyes internally. "Stop your squawking, you're so noisy." The prince reminds the king to get to the point. Only then does the king explain his purpose. "So let me ask you one last thing, Cecilia. Do you think it would be fine even if you were stripped of your privileges? You're from an upper house." But Cecilia says it's completely fine. "I just happen to be born well. Just because of that, I'm taking the place of truly talented people. I feel terrible for those who are truly talented." The king says she's truly a strange child. After everything is over, Cecilia finally feels truly exhausted. She feels dizzy and starts hallucinating. She feels like the prince has appeared, and he's even showing her great care. He even carries her into the bedroom. Strange things happen. The next day, she's full of energy again. Out of curiosity, she also wants to see the magic books collected at the Magic Academy. So she sneaks into the Magic Academy. But the school is just too big. She quickly gets lost. Just as she's hesitating whether to ask someone for directions, someone suddenly appears behind her, taking a closer look. This person is actually the Saint Heroine from the game. Originally, Cecilia really dislikes this Saint Heroine and doesn't want to deal with her. But this Saint Heroine is just too enthusiastic. She insists on showing her the way. She has no choice but to follow for now. Then, when the saint isn't paying attention, she slips away. To avoid being discovered, she waits until all the students start their classes. Then she sneaks into the library she's been longing for. Although all the books here are fascinating, she then sees on the blackboard an interesting question written there. So without realizing it, she writes down the answer on the blackboard. Because she's so focused, she doesn't even notice when the students finish class. Students quickly gather around. By the time she realizes it, it's too late. Good grief! How is her own brother standing behind her? And just like that, Cecilia is sent back home. However, she doesn't stay idle. Instead, she starts practicing new magic. Her level has now reached 25, so she's preparing to try higher level magic. Suddenly, her brother knocks on the door outside, saying a bunch of people have come to see her. Unexpectedly, as soon as she goes out, she sees that Saint Heroine. Cecilia is really fed up. She really doesn't want to have too much interaction with the Saint Heroine. Being with such a saint-like person will only undermine her villainous image. But this Saint Heroine is just too gentle. She wavers for a moment. Before she knows it, she's brought to a gathering. Cecilia thinks she must do something to solidify her villainous image. She immediately comes up with a wicked idea. She asks Angelica if she's good at magic. As soon as Angelica answers, she'll immediately suggest holding a magic performance for her, thinking that Angelica, being of commoner origin, must feel inferior. Making her perform in front of everyone will surely embarrass her. But unexpectedly, Angelica thinks it's a great idea, and everyone around praises it. After all, Angelica is the future queen. Such a personal showcase can greatly increase her prestige. This completely throws Cecilia off, but whether she understands or not, Angelica actually invites her to perform together, and she gently encourages her. Cecilia becomes embarrassed and angry. She directly interrupts Angelica, saying she doesn't want to go on stage with a commoner. Finally, the atmosphere cools down. Angelica finally shows a hurt expression. But before Cecilia can feel happy for even half a second, Angelica is once again all gentle and sweet. She's really fed up. She just can't understand why Angelica can always be so kind. She really wants to punch Angelica to see if she'll cry, but that seems too excessive. And so, Cecilia is stuck with Angelica for several hours. Angelica keeps gently asking her questions. Even though Cecilia tries with every answer to make Angelica dislike her, it's all in vain. She gradually goes from initial frustration to later becoming completely blank. Finally, she's so annoyed that she casually levitates the vase on the table and deliberately makes it float past Angelica's eyes, showing a smug and mischievous expression. However, this casual display shocks everyone. Good grief, a 10-year-old girl can actually use magic. Her brother can't believe. Even more. Just 2 days ago, she defeated him in swordsmanship, and now the magic she casually displays is at least level 6. Only then does Cecilia realize. She seems to have exposed her magic abilities, but she didn't expect that exposing her magic would be this serious. What she sees in everyone's eyes is more seriousness and tension, which leaves her feeling at a loss. So, after everyone leaves, she rushes to the Ash District that night to ask Casius what the consequences are of displaying magic at 10 years old. Casius tells her there was someone before who was as bold as her. They learned magic at 13, reached level 80 by 17, but then their magic went out of control. From then on, that person could never use magic again. Only then does Cecilia realize the seriousness of the situation. But Casius tells her that as long as she releases magic according to her level from now on, there basically won't be any problems. At this time, the little boy Noah, whom she saved earlier, also wakes up. Cecilia claims that although she saved him, it was completely to use him. Casius smooths things over, saying that although she says that, she's actually a good person. Noah immediately understands that Cecilia saved him. He quickly comes forward to thank her. Although Cecilia is a noble, she feels very different to him. Meanwhile, the royal palace is holding an emergency meeting through the night. The king has learned about Cecilia. The king realizes that Cecilia is very likely the bearer of the third rose, the legendary chosen one who can influence the kingdom's fate. What's even more remarkable is that Cecilia taught herself magic and broke through age limitations. However, he's also worried her magic power might go out of control. So he arranges for someone to teach her magic specifically, and so Cecilia's daily magic training begins. Of course, at night she still frequently goes to the Ash District. She also teaches Noah some magic knowledge along the way. Soon, 3 years pass. The king summons her again. He asks Cecilia what level she's at now. Cecilia says a mere level 80 is nothing worth mentioning. Everyone is astonished, so the king decides to have Cecilia become a teacher at the Magic Academy. Additionally, he has another favor to ask of her. That is to teach the holy maiden Angelica magic, because the saint is a natural-born saint. She's kinder and purer than anyone. But kindness alone cannot sustain the people. The king hands her an article the saint wrote about the exile grounds. After reading it, Cecilia is completely dismayed. If not utter nonsense, it's complete rubbish. The saint will help govern the country in the future. If she remains this unrealistic, it won't work. Therefore, the king needs Cecilia to take action personally, to train her into a capable saint who can stand on her own. But this completely contradicts Cecilia's life goals. Her father wants to refuse on her behalf, since this task will make her look like the bad guy. Hearing she can be a bad guy, Cecilia perks up. Because the saint is adored by everyone at school, even forming a cult of personality. Supposedly, almost no one dares oppose the saint's words and actions now, because anyone who dares criticize the saint will be shunned and hated by her fanatic followers. Cecilia says she'll take the job and absolutely won't disappoint. But Cecilia also has a condition: to bring Noah out of the exile grounds. Learning she's been going there for 2.5 years, her old father is absolutely shocked. However, in that place that makes nobles shudder, she encountered Noah, who was nearly beaten to death. Cecilia is indignant. Just because he's a criminal's son doesn't make him guilty. This is too unreasonable. With his talents, if he receives education, he might become a pillar of the nation. Not only that, if Casius wants to leave, Cecilia is willing to negotiate with the king, but Casius politely refuses. Since being exiled here, he has accepted his fate. On the way back, Cecilia is suddenly grabbed by someone begging for help, seeing the person covered in wounds. Cecilia immediately brings her to the village fountain. Without cleaning the dirt, she can't see how severe the wounds are, but the water quality here is extremely murky. Cecilia doesn't have time to worry about drawing attention. She immediately uses purification art to purify the water. Seeing the villagers gathering around, Cecilia releases barrier art to block their view. After washing, she discovers this young woman on the ground has extensive burns that have become infected. Her right leg below the knee is completely necrotic. She's surely going to die. Cecilia can only give it her all. Ordinary people's magic can only treat inflammation, but if she can't even heal burns, how can she become the world's strongest villainess in the future? Cecilia begins to intensify her shadow art. Amid the injured woman's blood-curdling screams, the burns are finally healed, but her necrotic lower leg must be amputated. When the injured woman wakes up and finds her leg gone, she completely breaks down, but soon she feels grateful for surviving. If she had met someone else today, only death would have awaited her. Cecilia doesn't need her thanks. As repayment, she wants her to become this village's savior, so Cecilia shapes her into a miracle resurrected from death's edge, and also the savior guiding the village, because Cecilia needs her help collecting the villagers' voices, so she can use the saint as an excuse to be a villainess. This is Noah's first time leaving the sealed village. Looking at the inside and outside like two different worlds, Noah doesn't understand. He's done nothing wrong, yet he's trapped there barely surviving. But Cecilia tells him to just hold his head high and be himself. This is Cecilia's first time entering the school openly. The girls come up saying they've heard from the saint. Not only are they overly familiar, they touch her hair without permission and even wonder what her brother's hair feels like. Cecilia unceremoniously slaps their hands away and accuses them of having no sense of boundaries. As the saint makes her shining entrance with her admirers, the fake nice girls start reversing the blame, complaining pitifully that Cecilia hit and scolded them. Cecilia says irritably that acting overly familiar on first meeting is disgusting. The saint believes this isn't a reason to hurt others. She hopes Cecilia can bravely apologize. Cecilia refuses, saying it's not necessary. She didn't come to school to make friends. Noah worries this will anger everyone. But Cecilia is very satisfied with this debut performance. What a perfect opening. But unexpectedly, the next moment Cecilia suddenly disappears. It turns out to be the prince. He forcibly uses teleportation art to transport Cecilia away, and thinking he's being cool, he pins her against the wall, asking why she agreed to his majesty's task. According to the game plot, the prince should have already fallen in love with the saint by now. Cecilia thinks he's already starting to suspect she's a bad woman. She says of course, because this way she can freely criticize the saint. With his majesty's orders, she won't be punished for it. The prince smoothly pulls out the necklace he gave Cecilia. She thinks the prince is about to tear it off. Unexpectedly, the prince kisses it directly. He says, "You're still wearing it. I'm so happy." The prince doesn't believe someone who blushes this easily could do anything bad. Cecilia didn't expect the prince to be this type of person. She lost her composure just now. This isn't how a villainess should act. She must adjust her mindset quickly. So after class, Cecilia finds the saint again. As expected, she's still surrounded by fanatic followers. Since the stage is already set, it's time for her performance. Cecilia gets straight to the point, wanting to discuss the saint's article. The saint believes everyone should be equal. This country's distribution system is flawed. First, they should remove the barrier around the exile grounds. Only with freedom can the villagers live happily. People outside will also be happy to have new neighbors. If everyone is happy, there will be no inequality. Cecilia bluntly criticizes her views as too shallow and idealistic, because equality for all is simply impossible. Her article's content is a pile of garbage. According to the game plot, the saint continuously expresses her views, making the love interest's affection skyrocket, while the villainess is ultimately refuted and defeated, at a disadvantage. But Cecilia doesn't plan to follow the original plot. Instead, she intensifies her attack. The saint thinks destroying the isolation barrier will eliminate inequality. However, the truth is, this will worsen public security. A simp questions why she assumes the villagers will cause trouble after being freed. Cecilia says assuming that gaining freedom will erase the resentment from long-term oppression and abuse is true arrogance. She tells the saint not to casually write these useless articles overflowing with naive compassion. Also, these simps only blindly flatter her. They're completely useless. The saint gets upset, saying you can insult me, but you can't insult my friends. But she forgets she's the most unfair person of all, born with a lovely appearance, unparalleled magic power, and unprecedented complete elemental mastery. Her very existence is the embodiment of inequality. Yet she doesn't realize the huge impact of her thoughtless words. When she spouts grand statements but can't solve problems, it's often the most vulnerable groups who suffer. The saint finally recognizes her shortcomings, but even so, she still won't give up pursuing her ideals. Cecilia is satisfied, but she hopes the saint will say something useful in the future. A simp tells the saint not to listen to Cecilia's nonsense, but the saint says Cecilia means well. The simp is so shocked, he has nowhere to vent his frustration. Meanwhile, Cecilia feels the first confrontation with the saint went quite well. Next time, if the saint says something self-righteously fake again, she'll still slap her in the face on the spot. Ever since Cecilia publicly humiliated Angelica, she has become a target of everyone's hostility at school. Almost everyone looks at her with hateful eyes. Noah really can't understand. Angelica just said a bunch of empty nonsense at the tea party. Yet it drives everyone so crazy. But precisely because of this, it means Cecilia will have to spend more time guiding Angelica. In other words, her reputation will become even worse. I'll become notorious. Ha ha ha! Noah is speechless. Afterward, Cecilia returns to the exile grounds again. According to Monica's investigation, the villagers currently hold extremely negative feelings toward the outside world. Some even say they want to go out and rob everything they see. Cecilia tells her to prioritize safety first. After all, with her leg, she can't run away easily. But what she doesn't know is that everyone now knows Cecilia is her backer, so no one dares to touch her. Cecilia is secretly overjoyed. She already has a villainous reputation. Although everyone says that wanting change is a pipe dream, she discovers that people actually have a bit of hope, which motivates her greatly. Monica knows clearly that what really needs to change is the villagers themselves, but she's curious. As an outsider, does Cecilia think the village could possibly regain freedom? Although Angelica is brainless, thanks to her powerful influence, this place has started attracting attention. It's just not yet at the stage where action can be taken. Afterward, Marcus suddenly approaches Cecilia to talk. Lately, Cecilia rarely sees him together with his twin brother Damien. Marcus always thought he understood Damien best, but ever since meeting Angelica, Damien became a Angelica echo machine, constantly going Angelica this and Angelica that. Then Angelica told him he just needs to be himself. Angelica's words were like sweet water moistening his parched throat, making him feel redeemed. But even so, during that debate between Cecilia and Angelica, Marcus felt Cecilia wasn't wrong. When everyone else blamed Cecilia for being unreasonable, only Marcus thought Angelica's views were too naive. Unexpectedly, this instead offended Damien. Since then, Marcus didn't want to hang around with the saint and her simps anymore, so he wants to know what Cecilia is actually planning to do. After all, from the very beginning, she seems to have been opposing Angelica, but Cecilia says it's nothing. Although Marcus doesn't believe her, he doesn't press further. He came this time to notify Cecilia about attending the king's next tea party. Her eldest brother warned her in advance not to speak recklessly. Cecilia knows this tea party is called the Saint's Test in the game. Originally, as the villainess, she shouldn't have received an invitation, so Cecilia thinks this is also an evil test for her. Facing Angelica's friendly gesture, Cecilia doesn't give her any face, thinking her presence definitely doesn't please Angelica. In the original plot, to unlock the true ending, you must choose the most correct answers to get high scores. However, Cecilia doesn't agree with those self-righteous answers. At this moment, all the love interests are present at the tea party. Several of her brothers are starting to dislike her, just like in the game. The only difference is Marcus. The redhead and the guy with glasses across from her clearly show their disgust on their faces. The blonde and the green-haired guy are both strange. The blonde maintains a friendly attitude toward both Angelica and Cecilia. The green-haired one is overly rational, as if deliberately acting helpful. The strangest is the prince. In the game, he clearly only smiles at the saint, which triggers the villainess's hatred toward Angelica. The king brings up Cecilia's prediction from 3 years ago. The Ceres kingdom really did experience economic collapse. The saint can't believe it. The economic policy from 3 years ago should have succeeded, but she doesn't understand at all that productivity and purchasing power aren't proportional. The policy she mentioned was just short-term stimulus. Cecilia asks what Angelica suggests now. The saint continues being foolish, hoping to form an alliance with them. Cecilia is shocked. What does the kingdom gain from that? The saint instead thinks that only caring about gains and losses is most pathetic. Sincerity is what saves people from disaster. The simps all nod, but Cecilia says if sincerity works, then why did their economy collapse? The simps glare at Cecilia angrily. The saint doesn't know how to refute. The guy with glasses is annoyed she's so good at arguing. He tells her to present her own brilliant ideas then. Cecilia believes they should take this opportunity to turn Ceres into a vassal state. The saint shrieks. How could that be so cruel? The simps all agree in unison. Marcus is speechless, because compared to the small kingdom, they should be more worried about the other great power, Valentia. While the kingdom gains nothing from taking over Ceres, if Valentia takes it over, the kingdom will suffer massive losses. The saint continues with absurd remarks. What about the people of the small kingdom? But she doesn't realize that putting your own country in danger for the sake of a small kingdom's happiness is what's truly foolish. The king is pleased by their heated debate. Only the saint and these brilliant minds are the kingdom's fortune. However, as soon as the king leaves, Cecilia quickly slips away too, because without the king, the simps show their true colors and shower Angelica with excessive praise. Afterward, Marcus actively seeks out Noah to fish for information, learning he's from the exile grounds. After all, he seems afraid of everyone except Cecilia. Noah says embarrassed and angry, what business is it of Marcus's? But he doesn't know he might become Cecilia's weakness. If Noah wants to stay with Cecilia, he must hide his emotions. Otherwise, people with ulterior motives will exploit him. After all, his sister seems to hate the saint and likes to cause trouble for her, so she attracts a lot of resentment. Cecilia says she doesn't hate the saint, but she can't tell him the truth. The only thing she can say is that she wants to become history's strongest villainess. So bullying a perfect being like Angelica, who everyone loves, feels great. A villainess. You're a good judge of character. Marcus didn't expect his sister to be so interesting. But indeed, Angelica is the most suitable target. If this is a virtual world, Angelica is undoubtedly the one-of-a-kind protagonist. Even the most ordinary words from her mouth sound like words of salvation. He never thought he'd like this type of girl before, but he got slapped in the face. Then he offers a possibility. Could it be the influence of magic? Cecilia falls into thought. Indeed, everything develops in her favor. Even plot armor shouldn't be this overpowered. But everything she knows about Angelica comes from the game settings. If Angelica, like her character, has also changed, it's not impossible. But the next moment, Noah's cry for help interrupts her thoughts. Cecilia turns around and gets hit with a club from behind, because Cecilia is suddenly kidnapped by outsiders at the school. At this moment, Noah has already been beaten half to death. Cecilia warns them to let him go if they don't want to die. But unexpectedly, she can't use magic anymore, because a magic sealing collar has been placed around her neck. The kidnapper punches Cecilia and knocks her down, although the lady only ordered them to torture Cecilia. This trash Noah will only get in the way. The two kidnappers discuss taking out Noah first. Who knew Cecilia would immediately counterattack and knock down the one who hit her? You're the trash. Noah no longer has the strength to stand. Cecilia knows that whether this is a game world or not, what's happening right now is real. She seizes the opportunity to grab a knife. Then she counterattacks the kidnappers. However, she doesn't use lethal force. She strikes people with the back of the blade. Noah is shocked. Even in this situation, she can stay calm. Soon, only one kidnapper remains on the scene. In the blink of an eye, Cecilia cuts through his weapon. The kidnapper wisely flees quickly. Cecilia throws a knife and strikes him down, but just as she's about to finish him off, the damned saint suddenly appears. She uses binding art to immobilize Cecilia. Cecilia, why are you doing such terrible things? This idiot. That man is the bad guy. I don't want to hear it. I only see Cecilia hurting someone. The kidnapper finds an opportunity to strike back at Cecilia. Fortunately, at the critical moment, the prince arrives with people. He blocks the blade with his arm to protect Cecilia. The simp brigade follows close behind. Her eldest brother sees Cecilia is injured and wants to heal her, but the saint speaks up to slander her, saying Cecilia was trying to kill someone who wasn't resisting, and she's glad she stopped it. Her brother has been brainwashed beyond saving, and also thinks Cecilia shouldn't have used violence. Cecilia asks back, even if she were killed, would he still not draw his sword? Her absurd brother says he wouldn't at all. Cecilia says disappointedly that he's forgotten his dignity as a knight. This saint acts like she's doing this for Cecilia's good, but only speaks pretty words, and she asks why Cecilia doesn't understand that violence only breeds more hatred, completely ignoring that she almost actually died. But you didn't die, did you? Cecilia and the prince instantly clench their fists in fury. The saint says if Cecilia had firm faith, the prince would definitely appear in time. Cecilia is dumbfounded. Is this even human speech? She thinks the prince appeared to respond to her faith, so Cecilia's safety is also her achievement. The prince is absolutely furious on the spot. Stop being so self-righteous. If Cecilia hadn't fought back, that child would already be dead, and all you did was stand there yapping. How dare someone like her call herself a saint? At the critical moment, the rational green-haired guy appears to prevent the conflict from escalating. The priority should be to treat Cecilia and Noah first. It's not good to let a lady lie on the ground in dirty clothes. Seeing the saint wants to defend herself, the crazy simps step forward to console her. They think Cecilia is just too young and immature. Sooner or later, she'll understand the saint's good intentions. The prince can't stand their absurd interaction. He carries Cecilia and prepares to leave. The saint asks jealously if the prince likes Cecilia. The white-haired guy explains the prince just sees her as a sister. That's great. I was worried because Cecilia could never make friends. I'm so happy the prince can take care of her. The green-haired guy freezes. The blonde breaks out in cold sweat. On the way, the prince says he'll support her freedom of action, but she shouldn't put herself in danger again. Learning Cecilia was in trouble, he was worried sick. Cecilia Cecilia can feel the prince's feelings for her, making her heart flutter. His scent also makes her feel very at ease. But unexpectedly, when she closes and opens her eyes, she sees the prince lying beside her. Cecilia can't figure out the current situation. The little devil in her heart suggests she sees the opportunity to seal the deal with the prince and steal the saint's dream of becoming queen. The little angel refutes that an upright villainess wouldn't do such a thing. While the little angel and devil are debating, the prince suddenly moves, stopping Cecilia's mental turmoil. In any case, she needs to leave before he wakes up. Who knew the prince was just pretending to sleep, holding the necklace stolen by the kidnappers? He asks Cecilia to come closer and help him put it on. But just as the prince is about to kiss her, Noah and the clear-headed Marcus suddenly appear, startling Cecilia so much she pushes the prince off the bed. Although Marcus doesn't mind the prince becoming his brother-in-law, he must get Cecilia's consent. Additionally, the mastermind behind this incident has been found. It's the saint's die-hard fanatic Oscar, the one who glared at her viciously at the previous tea party. Being made such a mess, Cecilia was planning to get good revenge, but unexpectedly, he's already been beaten half to death by the prince. That idiot will most likely spend the rest of his life in prison. The prince heard the king sent someone to tell the saint Cecilia's whereabouts. The king planned to use this incident to help the saint grow. Noah is upset. Is the saint that important? But the legendary saint saved the kingdom, so Cecilia became part of the saint's trial. The prince apologizes, saying the king has become obsessed. He doesn't care about anyone but the saint. She fulfilled her wish to oppose the saint, but she's still too inexperienced. To become the strongest villainess, there's no time for romance. But unexpectedly, her father suddenly changes his mind and no longer agrees to let Cecilia oppose the saint. Before, he thought it was just small squabbles between students. Who could have imagined it would nearly cost Cecilia her life? After all, she's only 13 years old. However, Cecilia still wants to fight for one more chance. Although this carelessness makes her admit she's somewhat lacking, either way, she's still one of the Academy's strongest. But what she doesn't know is that the saint can already use magic above level 80. Recently, rumors suddenly spread at school that Cecilia interfered and ruined the relationship between the prince and the saint. However, the prince hears some interesting information from the blonde, because those girls used to gang up to bully the saint, but recently they suddenly changed and publicly declared their love for the saint. To continue being the saint's opponent, Cecilia locks herself away to train intensely. She only has servants regularly provide living supplies and magic books. Noah wants to help Cecilia as quickly as possible, so he desperately wants to improve. Even though he could eat the same food as Cecilia, Noah chooses to live with the servants because it's closer to the library. But even so, the servants' food is already a delicacy to him. At this time, the saint appears with her simp brigade. Seeing the prince always looking gloomy, she suggests making a cake for the prince to lift his spirits. The simps are fawning behind her. The brainwashed shipping fans are also gossiping. The prince and the saint are the perfect match. As long as the saint is by his side, the prince will forget about Cecilia, that troublemaker. The prince really can't be bothered to listen to the saint and her pack of dogs yapping. He has no mood to eat her cake either. A group of simps come up to console her. That deluded brother even says it's probably Cecilia's fault. The saint also smiles and gives these simps some Pavlovian positive reinforcement. The prince is really fed up with these absurd idiots. Nearby gossips also say it's all Cecilia's fault, that she's preventing the prince and saint's relationship from progressing. The prince can only glare at them to shut them up. The blonde appears just in time and takes the prince away from the room. He finds those girls at school very interesting, because at first they all hated the saint with a passion and would even gang up to bully her. But at some point they seem to become completely different people, suddenly declaring publicly that they love the saint. How could people's feelings suddenly reverse like this? Right after, the green-haired guy appears. Now the entire school relies on their few remaining sane people to barely hold on. They know that once Cecilia returns, the situation will definitely get even worse. Afterward, the prince has someone start investigating the saint. He begins to suspect there might be some mechanism behind the saint's abilities that makes everyone fall in love with her. In a flash, 2 years pass. The magic barrier around Cecilia's residence finally disappears. Cecilia has finally finished 60 months of training, but the first thing she does is go to the exile grounds. Cecilia is very surprised. The village has completely transformed. The guard Gareth suddenly appears. He says Monica mentioned this is all thanks to Cecilia. This year, finally no children died from hunger. Gareth is grateful, but he still doesn't trust Cecilia, disappearing for 2.5 years, then suddenly appearing here. Cecilia doesn't mind his offense and actively suggests a sword duel. Gareth refuses, saying he never fights women, but Cecilia mocks him. Could it be that he can't? Gareth says angrily that a man can't be called unable. Don't blame him when he makes her cry later. At this time, Monica and Casius see the crowd gathering. Coming closer, they discover Gareth has already been defeated by Cecilia. The villagers can't believe it. As the village's #1 fighter, Cecilia must have cheated using magic. Gareth tells the villagers to shut up. Cecilia's strength is genuine, and Cecilia says the reason she's strong is because she's a noble's daughter. She has plenty of time to train in swordsmanship and first-class instructors to guide her. If Gareth had her conditions to learn swordsmanship, only then would he be qualified to compete with her. Gareth feels unwilling, thinking he's being mocked. But what he doesn't know is that Cecilia means he can use her. If she's just a hypocritical noble putting on a show, why not take advantage of her? Since Monica is so important to him. Seeing Casius appear, Cecilia is very happy. She also mentions her magic level has reached 91. She came here specifically to find Casius. With that, Cecilia begins to cast magic. Cecilia recites an ancient incantation. Casius realizes what's happening and starts to resist, but Cecilia insists on continuing. The next moment, one of Casius's eyes regains its sight because Cecilia uses magic to transfer her own eye to Casius. Cecilia knows Casius surely doesn't want this, but she equally hopes Casius can see the world again. Afterward, Cecilia's only concern is her father. What if he cries when he sees her like this? When she gets home, her father indeed erupts, then faints to the ground. After all, it's been 912.5 days since they last met. She wants to show the school's fanatic followers what a reborn villainess looks like. So Cecilia appears on campus in a black dress. As expected, she immediately draws everyone's attention, and this is exactly the effect she wants. To strike first and leave the fanatic followers with a deep impression of the villainess. As expected, soon a fanatic freckled girl walks into a trap. She didn't expect Cecilia would dare return and advises her to leave the school. Cecilia sees at a glance that the freckled girl is also one of the saint's fanatic followers. The obvious hostility coming from her is identical to the simp brigade. The freckled girl mocks Cecilia for dressing so flashy, saying she's clearly a shallow woman with no substance. Opposing the saint will only embarrass herself. After all, the saint never cares about decorating her appearance, and is a holy person who values the inner self. Right, that's indeed very saintly. However, the reality is most people judge others by appearance, and the freckled girl is also a hypocrite. She's attacking Cecilia based on her appearance right now. The freckled girl stubbornly says that's because Cecilia's filthy heart is exposed on the outside. However, Cecilia isn't one to back down. She comments that the freckled girl, as a noble, has a head full of split ends and messy hair. The long dress she's wearing only accentuates her stubby legs. Her bow is tied crookedly. It's like a lazy person's self-display. The freckled girl angrily accuses Cecilia of being too unreasonable. The saint said she's cute just as she is. Cecilia finds it odd. Why does her hair unnaturally cover her eyes? Did the saint say her freckles are cute too? Cecilia sees through her. She's just using it to cover her laziness, using the saint's words as an excuse to avoid effort. The other girl mentally breaks down. She starts cursing internally. At this moment, the saint finally appears, but the freckled girl complains first, saying Cecilia insulted her appearance. The saint has learned this time and wants to hear Cecilia's explanation first. Cecilia doesn't deny it. She really couldn't stand it, so she gave the freckled girl a little guidance on her appearance, but the saint really sees herself as a judge of justice. She must hear both sides before deciding who's right or wrong. After all, she almost got Cecilia killed before because of her preconceptions, so that's why Cecilia didn't want to come to school. Cecilia tells her to get lost and stop flattering herself. She didn't come to school because she had important business. It has nothing to do with the saint. The saint continues with absurd remarks. During that kidnapping, she knew clearly that Cecilia would absolutely be fine, because she believed she could save Cecilia. Since childhood, she knew she was a lucky person. Whatever she believes will happen, happens. Cecilia is shocked. Could the saint have realized she's the protagonist? So the saint hopes Cecilia can believe in her, and then everyone will have a happy ending. However, Cecilia knows the saint actually wanted her to die. After all, when she saw Cecilia confronting the kidnappers with the saint's abilities, she could clearly have subdued both of them. But she only controlled Cecilia alone. Is her behavior the distortion of human nature, or the collapse of morality? Only the saint herself knows. The saint loudly denies it, saying absolutely not. The spectators are shocked. This is the first time the saint has lost her composure, she asks with a dark expression. Is her being a bad woman what Cecilia hopes for? But that doesn't matter. If the saint is a good woman, she shouldn't be all talk. If she's discovered that everything happens as she wishes. Has she verified the scope and uncertainty of this influence? None of it. Cecilia is disgusted by this. If you want to promote your ideals, you should take them seriously and take proactive action. And Cecilia doesn't need the saint's salvation. Her ideals are loyal only to herself. This day, Cecilia skips grades directly to the upper class to be in the same class as the saint. She arrogantly says the lower grade classes are too simple and boring. Perhaps upper grade knowledge will be more interesting, but what she doesn't know is that behind the scenes, Cecilia is studying desperately to catch up. The saint's simps accuse Cecilia's arrogant tone of being vulgar. The saint voluntarily steps forward to play the good person, even though Cecilia's words are too harsh. They shouldn't all target her together. Unfortunately, Cecilia doesn't buy it. During the break, the saint clings to her again, wanting to have lunch with Cecilia, determined to completely win over Cecilia, because her whole life, everything she's wanted has come true. So she's confident Cecilia will definitely become her simp, her friend. Cecilia is really fed up. However, the saint is her least favorite type, and she has no mood to eat while looking at her face. Cecilia doesn't like being compared to the game's heroine, but the prince's situation also frustrates her, making it impossible to fully play a true villainess in front of him. Noah suggests she could stay away from the prince for a couple of days. Perhaps then she can figure out what the prince means to her. Cecilia refuses, saying that would be like running away and doesn't fit a villainess's style. Cecilia realizes she's still far from her ideal villainess, so she decides to be true to her heart and take the initiative. At this time, the saint is melancholy because the prince completely ignores her. Unexpectedly, Cecilia goes directly to the prince to lay it out. Although she never asked for his help, she still wants to thank the prince anyway. But if the prince cares about her, he should just say so. She's not someone who only looks into the distance. Cecilia is satisfied with her assertive performance, and it also makes the prince laugh. He tells Cecilia to prepare herself mentally because from now on, he won't hold back. At this moment, the saint's jealousy is overflowing. She immediately activates her ability to influence the emotions of those around her. Then, pretending to be innocent, she interrupts their conversation and deliberately makes an excuse to discuss the arts festival with the prince. Seeing the prince still has a big smile when he leaves, the saint can only force a smile, but Cecilia is extremely pleased inside. Her efforts have finally paid off. She's finally succeeded in making the saint uneasy. Then Cecilia returns to the exile grounds again. Casius suddenly gathers everyone in the village to announce a secret. It turns out his true identity is actually the current king's older brother. It turns out Casius was originally the kingdom's crown prince. Shortly after he was born, his mother passed away. As a result, Casius devoted all his time to studying magic, and by age 10, he had reached an astonishing level 80. Not only that, Casius could even cast level 100 magic beyond his grade. Unfortunately, he ultimately couldn't control it, causing his magic power to go berserk. Although Casius survived, he lost his magic power for a year. Later, the current king Reginald was born, and Reginald's mother was just an ordinary lower noble used to bear the heir to the throne. Instead, Casius lost hope of inheriting the throne because he lost his magic power. In the blink of an eye, Reginald smoothly ascended to the throne, and Casius was willing to assist the king, with the assistance of his council of 3 sages. At first, the kingdom operated very well, until Casius proposed that, to further develop the kingdom, he suggested decentralizing power and sharing governance among the 5 great houses. However, the king couldn't approve it because at that moment, he was still a mama's boy. Casius planned to further refine the policy later. The king could no longer hold back and scolded him not to do this, because his mother opposed it. He also didn't want Casius teaching him what's right and wrong anymore. After that, Casius was falsely accused of trying to harm the king. He was framed by villains and thrown into the exile grounds. Not only that, they blinded him. However, the villagers can't understand. After all, Casius is the king's brother. Would he really be so casually abandoned? However, according to Casius, his exile wasn't recorded in the outside world. He was simply declared missing. Only the king's mother, who orchestrated everything behind the scenes, and very few others know the truth. Presumably, she thought Casius's existence was too much of an eyesore and acted against him. He believes the king also thinks he disappeared. But at that time, the king had already begun to hate his brother and obeyed his mother's every word, so he never thought to send anyone to search for him. And the 3 nobles from the council who worked with him were also exiled to enemy countries by that woman. Cecilia sees that since Casius is willing to reveal the past, he must have decided to meet with the king. After all, Casius has no criminal record. If he appeals his wrongful treatment, things will be easier to handle. He can't accept that just because they're descendants of criminals, they must remain trapped in this cage. So he wants to meet the king to free the village and also apologize to him. Cecilia never imagined the saint was actually truly wicked. As her jealousy grows stronger and stronger, she even begins to brainwash those around her and the female classmates in her class surround Cecilia at the school gate every day with mockery and sarcasm. Cecilia can't be bothered and just curses casually. The 3 classmates have weak offense and poor defense and quickly break down. The saint worries that leaving Cecilia unchecked like this will sooner or later cause her to lose everyone's favor. This day, the corrupted saint has already extended her claws toward Noah. The saint actively approaches the isolated Noah, wanting to invite him to join a study group so she can learn more about the exile grounds. She also wishfully hopes both sides can understand each other, and perhaps this will bring her closer to Cecilia. Unfortunately, Noah doesn't buy it. Who knew the saint plans to use her ability to forcibly control him? But everyone she gets close to eventually becomes her friend. At the critical moment, the prince suddenly appears to save the day, seeing Noah protecting the saint behind him. The prince knows he's been influenced too. Without a word, he takes him away from the saint. At this moment, Noah is still in a confused state, but what the saint doesn't know is that thinking about the prince's different treatment of her and Cecilia twists her heart. She immediately amplifies the freckled girl's negative emotions and starts causing trouble. Soon Cecilia hears screaming from the cafeteria. The freckled girl ruined Isabella's hair with scissors, but then turns around and blames it on Cecilia, which is absurd because she thinks Isabella admires Cecilia instead of the saint. Seeing her so obsessed with an inferior woman makes the freckled girl sick. Perhaps Isabella wants to be like Cecilia too, publicly humiliating her to get attention. Cecilia is really fed up. She can see the freckled girl's resentment toward her, but she shouldn't resort to violence against innocent people. Cecilia mocks that she obviously knows she can never win with words, but the freckled girl has completely gone insane. She unilaterally believes Isabella grew her hair long just to look more like Cecilia. Now she can never become Cecilia. Noah is shocked by the freckled girl's cruelty, but the freckled girl says, Cecilia is the truly bad one. Otherwise, why doesn't Cecilia care when someone who admires her goes through all this? Cecilia admits she doesn't care. What are you going to do about it? If Isabella truly admires her or wants to become someone like her, she wouldn't be troubled by something like this. Cecilia does something that surprises everyone. She cuts her own hair short on the spot. Now they really do look alike. Afterward, the prince is quite unhappy he wasn't there in person to witness that moment. But unexpectedly, after that, short hair became the new trend among girls. Now quite a few students have changed their opinion of Cecilia, but there are still many extreme fanatic followers who occupy the garden and don't allow short-haired girls to enter. But the blonde also admires Cecilia for being someone who was previously despised yet changed people's views through her own efforts. Even among the saint's loyal followers, changes are gradually appearing, which Noah finds very strange. However, Cecilia has finally noticed something odd. One or two people would be fine, but so many people simultaneously undergoing such drastic changes is truly strange. But unexpectedly, the freckled girl is now completely despised by everyone. Because she made people start questioning the saint, she's also become the target of the fanatic followers' revenge. Meanwhile, the investigation into the saint has finally made progress. Ancient texts seem to contain the truth about the saint legend. There's a type of magic called enchantment that is a special power only the saint can use. This is why all legends about the saint say that as long as she's present, she can bring joy to people's lives. Perhaps even the saint herself hasn't realized she's using enchantment. Only those with strong will and magic power can resist the magic. That's why Noah was so easily affected last time. And those fanatics don't seem like people with strong will or power. Moreover, their attitudes toward the saint keep flip-flopping unstably. But speaking of unstable, the freckled girl takes the cake. As a fanatic follower of the saint, she publicly ruined someone's hair, but she wasn't like this before. So the most likely explanation is that the saint's magic causes people to lose control. But Cecilia believes the saint is the one who's lost control. Her ability has been having the same effect on everyone all along, but now the balance has been broken. Unfortunately, the book doesn't record any solution. Marcus suggests his theory. Perhaps those affected must develop doubt toward the saint. That's how he broke free from being enchanted. After all, the saint's logic is full of holes. As a result, the simps all complain to the saint that the prince's group is trying to make them doubt her. The saint denies all accusations, not understanding why even the prince has started targeting her. Subconsciously, she starts activating her enchantment. So the simp brother receives the signal. He directs the blame at Cecilia, saying it's because Cecilia knows she can't win against the saint, that she's deliberately spreading rumors. So what the saint needs to do most is keep her distance from her. At this time, Cecilia's group also arrives at the cafeteria. The simps escort the saint away, while stepping forward to prevent them from approaching. Trying to drive a wedge between them and the saint? Don't even think about it. Seeing Cecilia's troubled expression, the prince chooses to step forward and use his charm. He wants to join the saint's little group. The saint happily agrees and uses enchantment again. Seeing this, the simps voluntarily give up their seats. The saint is surprised not to see Cecilia and the clear-headed Marcus. The prince immediately stops her. He doesn't want to hear another man's name from the saint's mouth. The simps are true simps, blushing for no reason. Noah doubts whether this cheesy performance is reliable, but he doesn't know the devastating effect the prince's sweet words have on the saint. As expected, the prince soon brings the saint to his secret room. The saint hasn't even been happy for half a second. When she sees Cecilia is also there, seeing there's no avoiding it, the saint reluctantly agrees. Cecilia gets straight to the point, hoping she'll stop using enchantment. The saint herself hasn't realized it yet, so she vehemently denies it. So Cecilia hands the document to the saint. It states that enchantment is magic only the saint can use. Today the saint didn't want to see her in the cafeteria, which is why Cecilia and the prince helped. The saint denies it, saying they just said to stay away from Cecilia. But what she doesn't know is that Cecilia knows this is exactly what the saint was thinking, just as she said before that she's a lucky girl. And it's all because people, influenced by her magic, work hard to fulfill her wishes. The best evidence is that no one has ever shared their own thoughts with her. The saint denies it, saying she became friends with others after getting to know each other. But the prince points out, hasn't she noticed that the simp's initial attitudes were completely different from now? Doesn't she ever wonder why everyone has such inexplicable fanaticism for her? The saint vaguely senses it, but she doesn't understand. If it's true, why doesn't the prince like her? The saint suddenly confesses she likes the prince. She didn't want to be the saint herself. As a commoner, she suddenly entered a noble school. To her, it was like entering another world. The strange looks around her made her feel scared. That's why she worked hard to become the saint everyone expected, to become someone worthy of being with the prince. Cecilia suddenly understands that everything she said and did was just her trying to pursue her ideal self. The saint thought if she had met the prince before Cecilia, perhaps she would be the one the prince likes. But the prince publicly declares his love, saying he'll only like Cecilia. The prince's words break the saint's heart. She frankly admits she envies Cecilia for always being so confident and earning the prince's love. But unexpectedly, the simps have finally regained their clarity. Compared to the saint, the simp brother now cares more about his own sister. Seeing everyone's attitudes completely change, the saint finally believes that all along, everyone she thought loved her was actually under the influence of magic. Classmates accuse her, saying it's all the saint's fault. She argues back, what did she do wrong? No one taught her how to be a saint, but everyone put her in the saint's position and made her bear it all alone. After all, for the saint, this isn't a game. Cecilia tells the saint not to care about what others think. If you're not pursuing your own ideals, It's meaningless. Being a saint is nonsense. She should only think about her own happiness. However, for her, even if everything now is fake, she truly wants to see everyone show genuine smiles someday. Cecilia is glad she can find her true self. The saint pulls herself together. She always knew the prince only had eyes for Cecilia, so she takes the document recording enchantment magic, planning to control her power properly. On the other side, the prince suddenly proposes to Cecilia. Since she wanted him to be direct, this is the perfect opportunity to settle the marriage. Everyone watches the drama unfold. The saint also starts egging them on, but Cecilia hesitates. Cecilia reflects on everything up to now. All her efforts along the way to pursue the villainous path. After all, love and romance alone couldn't have brought her to where she is now. But Cecilia finally responds to the prince's love. The next time they meet, she'll become an even more captivating villainess. Cecilia has already agreed to go there with the saint to influence the country. The prince is shocked by his father's exploitation of Cecilia. When she was 7, a midnight rose bloomed in the garden. It turns out Cecilia is the third entity who might control the kingdom's fate. This is all fate's doing. The only thing the prince can do is respect Cecilia's wishes. When Cecilia truly completes her villainous journey, they will meet again.